just welcome everybody here first. I want to thank Sigfried Sassoon and thank the leaders of the people. Today we celebrate the second year honouring poet Robert Graves and his family connection to Limerick. I'm so delighted to be working with the team, and Donald Turner is going to recite a poem. Before the poem, I'm just going to say
Heavenly Father, as we gather together here this evening, remembering Robert Graves, let us remember that poetry is your gift to us, an abiding talent that takes us into the realm of prayer. Words, mere words, yet made into poetry, and lifting our hearts to your glory. Bless all wordsmiths and their muses, who give us respite from our daily routine, who show us a more beautiful way to look at our world and at one another, whose fine prose and rhyme can express more than we can imagine, thanks to their God-given power. And so let us pray. Almighty God, more generous than any father, more loving than any family, we stand amazed at the many gifts you shower upon your people. You are the refuge and help of all your children. We praise you for all that you have given us, for all that you have done for us, for all that you are to us. In our weakness you are our strength. In our darkness you are our light. In our sorrow you are our comfort and our peace. We cannot number your blessings. We cannot declare your love. For all your goodness we bless you. May we live as in your presence and love the things that you love and serve you in our daily lives through Christ our Lord. Amen.
Now, Donald Turner will recite the memory poem 1915 written by Robert Graves. And this poem reminds us that our memories of love and peace can always rescue us, even in the darkest of hours. So, go on.
I watch the seasons pass slow, so slow, in the fields between Labasse and Bethune. Primroses on the first warm day of spring, red poppy flood June, yellowing autumn, and so to winter nights, knee-deep in mud and snow. And you've been everything to me. Dear, you've been everything to me in these soul-deadening trenches. Pictures, books, music, the quiet of an English wood, the narrow, bouldered mountain track, the broad bosomed ocean, green and black, and peace, and all that is good.
Right. Welcome everybody. I'd like to welcome you here to our celebration of the life and work of the poet and author Robert Graves. Last year on this day we inaugurated this plaque here behind me to commemorate Graves and his family connections with Limerick. It was the beginning of the Limerick Literary Trail, which we see as a series of plaques dedicated to writers from and with connections to Limerick. It will become part of an itinerary for visitors to Limerick who wish to walk in the footsteps of the writers who found inspiration here. The strength of our literary heritage is a significant part of the history of our city. Our walking tours will allow people to trace the footsteps and visit the inspirational haunts of our writers, several of whom, and particularly Robert Graves, have made a major contribution to European and world literature. And I would like to call on Pat McMahon to fill us in on some biographical details about Robert Graves and the Graves family connections with Limerick. And after this, we will head upstairs where we'll have a short reading of poems and prose written by Robert Graves. So over to Pat McMahon.
Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, speaking on RTE radio just over a year ago, the poet Michael Longley said he regarded Robert Graves as an English poet. And he went on to say that Graves spent very, very little time in Ireland, very little indeed. Longley said that Graves overstressed his Irishness. Well, I think that Longley is wrong about this, and I will explain. The connection between Robert Graves and Ireland, and in particular the connection between Robert Graves and Limerick City, is a real connection, and a connection of substance. We have just come from St Mary's Cathedral, where Donald Turlough read a Robert Graves poem at the burial place of Bishop Charles Graves. It is Bishop Charles Graves who provides this city's connection with Robert Graves, for on this day 120 years ago, in 1895, the Graves family here in Limerick was celebrating the birth of a grandchild. That grandchild was Robert Graves. My grandfather, who blessed me as a child, as Robert Graves wrote in his poem, Age Gap. Bishop Charles Graves is regarded as one of the last of the great antiquarian scholar bishops. He is remembered for his broad-mindedness, for his dignity, and for his personal charm. And I think that this evening, when we celebrate poetry, we should remember that the friends of the bishop included William Wordsworth, Matthew Arnold, and the composer Mendelssohn. So the connection between grandfather and grandson, and the influence of a grandfather on a grandson, is most in evidence in this wonderful book by Robert Graves entitled The White Goddess, a work of poetic and religious scholarship in which Graves examines the psychological and mythological sources of poetry. It is generally agreed that the White Goddess has its origins in the Celtic literary movements of the 1890s. And in those years, Charles Graves, Bishop of Limerick, was a very prominent Irish antiquarian and also a pioneer in the decipherment of OM inscriptions. The father of Robert Graves, the poet Alfred Percival Graves, was also an important figure in the Irish literary revival. Robert Graves then spent his childhood in a household full of the literary bustle of a committed pan-Celtic poet and educator. Robert Graves' interest in his father's and his grandfather's ideas really began to take hold when Robert was in his mid-40s, and his interest was stimulated by the fact that he was able to turn to a shelf full of learned books on Celtic literature, which he says, I found in my father's library, mainly inherited from my grandfather, who was a bishop in the cathedral. In his mid-years then, Robert Graves was resuming a family tradition, and it has been said by the critic Greville Lindop that there was a sense in which the White Goddess might claim to be the last product of the Irish literary revival. And I think this is what makes the connection between Robert Graves and Limerick City a real connection, and a connection of substance. Many of the books which Robert Graves used, and which I have already referred to as coming from his father's and grandfather's library, found their way to his study in his house in Majorca, where Graves lived for many years. And in his house in Majorca, Graves had Joyce's Social History of Ancient Ireland and MacAllister's Secret Languages of Ireland, and the many volumes of the Transactions of the Irish Text Society. Robert Graves had a special interest in Owen, or Bishop Charles Graves had a special interest in Owen, which is the early medieval alphabet used primarily to write the early Irish language. In an interview published in 1969 in the Paris Review magazine, Robert Graves specifically mentions the Owen tradition, and he says that my poetic system accords with the Irish of the 8th century AD, and he referred to the poetic tradition of Ireland when he said, he referred to it as one of the strongest in the world. And I'm just going to conclude by giving you a flavour of the White Goddess. And I want to mention just one of the passages where Graves talks about a hazel tree, and mentions a holy well not too far, maybe short distance, but not too far from here. As Robert Graves points out in the White Goddess, the hazelnut in Celtic legends is always an emblem of concentrated wisdom, something sweet, compact and sustaining, enclosed in a small hard shell. An early Irish topographical document, the Ren Dean Shanachas, again Graves reminds us of this, describes a beautiful fountain called St. Conla's Well near Tipperary, over which hung 9 hazels of poetic art, which produced flowers and fruit which became beauty and wisdom simultaneously. And as the nuts fell into the well and fed the salmon swimming within it, all the knowledge of the arts and sciences were bound up in the eating of those nuts. Again, as Robert Graves reminds us, as has been noted in the story of Fionn. So I conclude by saying that Robert Graves did not overstress his Irishness as Longley asserts. I believe that Robert Graves was immersed in a Celtic and Gaelic tradition. Frank Brereton, professor at Queen's University and president of the Robert Graves Society, paid this tribute. Without the multifaceted and contradictory Graves, without Graves, war poet, love poet, muse poet, romantic, lyric perfectionists and mischief maker, without him, the story of modern poetry itself is incomplete. Ladies and gentlemen, I think it is just great that Dominic Taylor and the Limerick Writers Centre are giving a platform to Limerick City's connection with one of the great lyric poets of the 20th century. Thank you.
Okay, welcome once again to the Locke Bar. We're now going to have some readings by some local poets and writers from the work of Robert Graves. I'd like to start the reading myself with a favourite poem of mine, one of which I've always found some inspiration in, and everyone who has maybe had the misfortune or so to listen to me singing my own songs will find a line or two from this poem scattered among the lyrics. Graves has said that the function of poetry is the religious invocation of the muse. This poem, which I'm about to read, is a restoration, as Graves put it, of an ancient Celtic myth, tying it into the old alphabet, and first published in 1948 in the White Goddess, which was many people's first introduction to the matriarchal structure of the human society. The poem is called The Song of American. I am a stag of 7 tines. I am a flood across a plain. I am a wind on a deep lake. I am a tear the sun lets fall. I am a hawk above the cliff. I am a thorn beneath the nail. I am a wonder among flowers. I am a wizard who with eye sets the cool head of flame with smoke. I am a spear that rolls.
This is called Alice, and pretty obvious reason. Alice. When that prime heroine of our nation, Alice, climbing courageously into the palace of looking glass, found it inhabited by chessboard personages, white and red, involved in a never-ending tournament, she being of a speculative bent, had long foreshadowed something of the kind, asking herself, suppose I stood behind and viewed the fireplace of their drawing room from Hartford level, why must I assume that what I see would need to correspond with what I now see?
I watch the seasons pass slow, so slow, in the fields between Labassay and Bethlem. Primroses, the first warm day of spring. Red poppy flood June, August, and yellowing autumn.
He is quick thinking in clear
images.
I am slow thinking in broken
Images.
He becomes dull, trusting to his clearer
Images.
I become sharp, mistrusting my broken.
Images.
Trusting his images, he assumes their
Relevance.
mistrusting my images, I question their
Relevance.
assuming their relevance, he assumes the
Fact.
questioning their relevance, I question the
Fact.
when the fact fails him, he questions his
He senses.
when the fact fails me, I approve
My senses.
he continues quick and dull in his clearer
Images.
I continue slow and sharp in my broken.
Images.
In a new confusion, he in a new confusion of his,
Understanding.
I in a new understanding of my.
Confusion. Well done.
He is quick thinking in clearer images.
I am slow thinking in broken images.
He becomes dull, trusting to his clearer images.
I become sharp, mistrusting my broken images.
Trusting his images, he assumes their relevance.
Mistrusting my images, I question their relevance.
Assuming their relevance, he assumes the fact.
Questioning their relevance, I question the fact.
When the fact fails him, he questions his senses.
When the fact fails me, I approve my senses.
He continues quick and dull in his clear images.
I continue slow and sharp in my broken images.
He in a new of his understanding.
I in a new understanding of my confusion.
He is quick.
I am slow thinking in broken images.
He becomes dull.
I
trusting
become
in his
sharp,
clear
mistrusting
images.
my broken images.
Trusting his images.
Mistrusting my
he assumes their
images, I
relevance.
question their relevance.
Assuming their relevance.
Questioning
he
their
assumes the
relevance, I
facts.
question the fact.
When the fact fails him,
When the
he
fact
questions his
fails me,
senses.
I approve my senses.
He continues quick and dull in
I
his clear
continue
images.
slow and sharp. I approve my.
He continues quick and dull in his clear images.
I continue slow and sharp in my broken images.
He
In a new confusion of his understanding. In a new understanding of my confusion. There we go.
To you who'd read my songs of war and only hear of blood and fame, I say, we've heard it said before, war's hell. And if you doubt the same, that I found in Mammoth's wood today a certain cure for rusted blood, where, propped against a shattered trunk, in a great mess of things unclean, sat a dead Bosch, he scowled and stunk, with clothes and face a sodden dream. Big-bellied, spectacled, crop-haired, dribbling black blood from nose and beard.
Call it a good marriage, for no one ever questioned her warmth, his masculinity, their interlocking views. Except one stray graphologist who frowned in speculation at her H's and her S's, his P's and his W's. Though few would still subscribe to the monogamic axiom.
4 collier lads from Vale took shelter from a shower of hail, and there beneath a spreading tree attuned their mouths to harmony. With smiling joy on every face, 2 warbled tenor, 2 sang bass, and while the leaves about them hissed with rough hail, they started aberystwyth. just to develop what Pat was saying about the Limerick connections. His father's name was Alfred Percival Graves, and the Percival is a Limerick connection. I better read that section. The father of this man, therefore the bishop's father, or the grandfather of this man. So the bishop's father was John Crosby Graves, barrister at law, and afterwards chief police magistrate for the city of Dublin. And he himself, now there's another Limerick connection, as the father of the bishop, was the grandson of the Reverend James Graves, vicar of, wait for it, Kilfinnan and Dara in the County Limerick. And there's a connection now with all that literary activity in Ballyhoward.
My familiar ghost again comes to see what he can see. Critic, son of conscious brain, spying on our privacy. Slam the window, bolt the door, yet he'll enter in a stay. And bring the dead to life. To bring the dead to life is no great magic. Few are wholly dead. Blow on a dead man's embers, and a live flame will start. Let his forgotten griefs be now, and now his withered hopes. Subdue your pen to his handwriting, until it proves natural to sign his name as yours.
Before she does that, again, I'd like to thank everybody who came here today to help us celebrate the life and work of Robert Graves. I think we started something here last year by putting up the plaque, and we've continued it this year today, and I'm hopeful that we can continue it year after year and build on it and get something going that people will appreciate Robert Graves in Limerick.